During this quick video, we're going to be talking about super operating procedures or standard operating procedures, and you also might hear the term SOPs. And so, what this means is helping your classroom management and your students have a successful year with routines and different procedures. And so we're just going to talk about how to kind of set this up. And so we're going to also be learning about the importance of having a standard operating procedure, how we train students, and then we're going to identify different tasks that we can use to develop these standard operating procedures. And then you're going to be able to identify different tasks for your classroom to develop what procedures you would like. And maybe work with your team as well, because if students are in multiple classes, remembering all the different routines can be really hard for some students. And so maybe it's having that consistency with your team members um, or even your department. So, first off, what is a standard operating procedure? It helps with learning, and in the long run, it's better if you have a classroom that is set up with different SOPs because then you create a well managed classroom. Once you have a well managed classroom, you have a lot more student engagement. Once you have student engagement, you have that productive learning environment where students can do some really fun activities. But if you don't have this well managed classroom, you can often struggle with that outcome of a productive learning environment. And so, procedures do increase the efficiency and effective use of class time. If you're able to set up those procedures in the beginning of the school year, your class time will be great and you're able to save a lot of time in the long run. Also, once you do have that well managed classroom, you can do a lot of different activities with those students. They're able to work in groups, they're able to do really cool projects. But if you're struggling with those classroom management parts, they might not be successful in working with a group or completing a certain task. So, how do you teach these SOPs? The first thing is you want to explain it. You want to talk with the students. You want to explain what it is. You also want to model what it looks like. And you also want to demonstrate the procedure. So, explain that process, explain how it happens. Then you want to rehearse it and practice it with your supervision. You want to go over those standard operating procedures with the students, have them practice it, and teach it as it comes up. So, if a student is turning in an assignment and they need to go to a green bin, they need to show that procedure. They're at a level 0, they're walking straight to the bin, they're not going around to talk to their friend, and then they're placing it in the bin. If students do it incorrectly, you need to reinforce it and reteach it. So you need to say, please sit down and try again. This is how we do it. And again, you keep doing it until it becomes a habit or a routine. So just a reminder that this is, it can be a long approach. And so again, procedures are those tasks that students will do to increase their chances of learning. Um, a routine is that habit. They don't need your prompting or supervision, and that is our long-term goal, is that it just becomes a routine. So if there's a sub in the classroom, they just do it. They don't need your reminder, where at the beginning it is going to be a lot of different reminders and rehearsals and reinforcement. There is a link on this slide deck if you click here, and it talks about a well-managed class, and it talks with Harry Wong. So he talks about classroom management, so feel free to read this resource and explore kind of a little bit more on what this might look like. So here's the rehearse, reinforce, and it really does go over kind of how to help and create this well-managed classroom. Once you do that, we're going to kind of explain what this might look like. So we're having students and they're going over procedure, and we want them to have our undivided attention. So maybe we're giving instructions or we're just trying to tell the kids what is next. So we tell them, hey, maybe you see me standing here with my hand up. Or maybe you use some type of noise like a bell. And because you use that or they see your hand while working, they need to do something with that. So whenever I need your attention, maybe I raise my hand or I play some type of sound. I've heard stop, look, listen. I've heard teachers use 1, 2, 3. I've heard clap once if you can hear my voice, clap twice. There's all different kinds of things that you can use. And I'm sure you can do a quick Google search and have some other ideas. I've heard other teachers use OH and then the students reply IO. So again, there's so many different ideas that you can do to grab your students' attention. But that's where you've got to decide as a teacher, what do you want to do? Or maybe you're working with your team of teachers. What do you as a team want to do? So whenever the students hear that, I want my students to freeze. I want them to face me and pay attention and have their eyes on me. I also want them to be ready for those instructions. So what I say is they need to watch and listen. And so again, I go over that the first couple of times that I'm introducing this procedure. Hey, when I put my hand up, or hey, when I ring this bell, or hey, when I say 1, 2, 3, I want you to freeze, turn and face me, pay attention to me, and keep my eyes on me. Once you do that, I then want you to be ready for instructions that I'm about to give. And again, we're going to keep going over that a couple times. So repeat it and make sure you're looking for that class understanding. Maybe I ask students, hey, what happens when I say 1, 2, 3? What happens if I say OH? What happens if I do this? And they show it. So they're practicing it, they're rehearsing it. And again, you're asking students what is expected out of that behavior. Once you do that, you're going to repeat this with a couple other students. So then you might ask, is there anyone who doesn't understand? And then again, you practice that procedure whenever you need your students' attention and you go over it. Just a reminder, freeze. You need to turn and face me and you need to be ready for the instructions. And again, you go over it until it becomes a routine. And depending on your students, sometimes it can go quickly, sometimes it might take some time for them to be able to master that routine. The next step is that rehearse. So then I'm going to just tell my students, thank you so much. You've practiced that procedure correctly. You're going to let them know, yes, you did it right, or no, you didn't do it right. And we're going to just keep practicing it until we do it right. So students might be working, and again, I hold my hand up. I say OH, IO, or whatever. I hit the bell. And maybe we're doing that the first time, and you might not say a word. So you're going to see kind of how the students do with that procedure. And you have to be patient. You have to wait until the entire class completes those 3 different steps that were in that first slide. So freeze, turn and face me, and be ready for instruction. So you're waiting for the entire class to do that. And again, don't give up and till the students give your undivided attention. If someone's still talking, wait, keep going and compliment those that have already done it. And again, keep practicing and practicing that procedure. Once you do that, you're going to go into this reinforcement stage. And so you're going to thank the students and tell them, like, yes, that was done correctly. And that's what happens when I hold my hand up or ring the bell or say OH and then they say IO. And then you just kind of say, please do the same thing each time you see this prompt. So again, you're just reinforcing that behavior. And it's so important when you're going over classroom management. Students need consistency and they need procedures. They sometimes, I know I struggled as a new teacher. I thought my students would just get it. They knew how to behave. They were 5th graders. They should just get it. And that's not always the case. So we need to go over these procedures and we need to have consistency. And we also need to work with our students on these different skills. Also, we need to keep using the same wording if we want our students to practice the same routine. So if you're using 1, 2, 3, keep using that. Don't just randomly change it to stop, look, listen. So continuously use the bell ringing, continuously use some type of way to get their attention. And then again, you're waiting for every single student to give your undivided attention on that procedure. It's important to be consistent. So every single time you see a procedure that might need corrected, again, remind the class of what it is and then have them do that procedure. So have them try it, experience it, and give feedback. Also, you kind of want to reflect. Do you currently have procedures developed for the following? Go ahead and kind of think about it. What do you do when you're starting the class? Are you taking attendance? if a student's tardy, what happens? If a student is absent, what happens? What do they start working on? Do they do an entrance ticket? Do they come in reading? Do they come in loud? Do they come in quiet? Think about all of those things when you're starting class. Also start thinking about during instruction time. Do you want students moving around? What happens if you need to get their attention? What are the noise levels when they're working on different tasks, if they're in a group or if they're not in a group? What happens when they need to use the restroom? Do they need to sign out on something? Do they need to ask? Do they grab a hall pass? What do they do if they finish all of their work? Do they have like a can-do list or some type of activity that they can work on? Also, what do they need to use if their technology breaks or they need to sharpen a pencil or borrowing of materials? This will come up, I promise. And it will probably come up faster than you realize in your classroom. And so you've got to have a procedure for everything and you've got to inform students. And as it happens, you teach the students those procedures until it becomes a routine. Maybe when it's ending the class, how do students put their things away? How do they leave your class? Do they leave when the bell rings? Do they wait for you to dismiss? Do they need to be seated? What about exit tickets? Do they put them in a certain bin? Is there no exit tickets? That kind of thing. So start to think about, how are these things going to look in my classroom this school year? And what do I need to do in order to make it a successful school year? Here are some resources. So if you click here, you can see this quick checklist. It has different procedures that you can think about, like taking attendance. Do you want the students to answer like a would you rather question? Do you want to call them out? Do you want them to have magnets and they move their name to present? How do you want to handle maybe class equipment? How do you handle late work, missing work? Think about all of these different things that you have in your classroom and how you want students to handle it. Right here is some just examples. You can kind of see here, you can start class immediately. And so they talk about different examples in the classroom. So feel free to read over this resource. It's with Harry Wong. And so again, you're able to kind of see different grade levels and different things like that. This one right here is just another example as well, going over a different procedure. So here's like day 4, day 5, and it's really spelled out by each of the different days. So you can kind of see right here, by day 10, habits should be in place now. Check for areas and rehearse. And again, it's not going to be in day 1. It's going to take time, and you're going to need to reteach and reinforce every single day until your students have that routine down in down in their down in their brains. Also, you can kind of see here are some downloads that you can also use as resources as well. So click links, explore, really do think about classroom management if you are feeling a little exhausted by it. Okay. And then think about maybe these asynchronous activities. So now maybe you're wanting to start a blended learning type classroom. Well, you've got to have procedures in place for it to be successful. And so think about, what is this going to look like in my Google Classroom? How am I going to organize things? How do I want students to turn things in? How do I want students to notify me if they have questions or if they can't find something or they're absent? So again, think about all of those virtual classroom pieces because we do use technology in the classroom. So again, just start thinking about, how do I want this to be done? Sometimes it helps to give a virtual tour of your classroom environment, teaching students how maybe to use Google Classroom, how they use Flipgrid, how they use iReady, how do they use maybe a timer to help them. What do they do if they complete an assignment? How do they turn it in? So think about all of those different procedures that need to take place. Um, and again, here's another piece for blended learning, that's synchronous instruction, asynchronous instruction. What should they be doing if they're in a synchronous instruction with maybe a group or you? What do they do if they finish an asynchronous activity pretty quickly? How do they send and receive messages when they're emailing you? Do you want a certain subject line? Do you want them to put their name and what homeroom they're in? Like, how do you want them to address emails to you? Or do they email you? Do they just put things in Google Classroom? How do you want Google Classroom? Do you want them to click the turn in? How do you want them to respond in digital conversations? How do you want them to work collaboratively? And again, whenever you introduce this new tool, you've got to teach that procedure. For example, Flipgrid. You might have to go over what are your expectations for Flipgrid. Do you want the camera on? Do you want just audio? How are the students supposed to behave when they're using these different tools? What do they do if they're done? Do they sign out? Do they just close their Chromebook? Do they go through class links? So again, creating those different habits for students. Here are just some tips and examples. So you can kind of see right here, there's an iPad SOP. So again, this SOPs are created for things that are done on a repeated basis. Students are always going to be coming into your classroom. What's the procedure? It's going to be the same every single day. Can students create it? And you can have students help you. So these can be created by the students, and you can also display them so that they're easy to reference and students can quickly see them hanging on the wall or wherever they need to see them. Right here, we talk about procedural lists. So often to ensure safety and compliance, it's good to just kind of think about what happens, like what are your non-negotiables, because you do need to keep your students safe. And so like getting on the bus routine, we can't run. There's a fire drill, there's no running, it's quiet. So again, going over those expectations with your students and what you expect from them. And then just talking to them about maybe like turning in an assignment. What is that path and what are they to do? Um, it also helps to list maybe like actionable items. So what do you want them to bring to class? Their Chromebook, their pencil, having that out and just kind of listed on a list can really help them understand what they need to get ready for. And you can see right here, groups give thoughtful feedback. Using acronyms can really help as well. Just to help students really think about, okay, use soft voices. What's the you say, and just keeping to remind them on that. This one's a flow chart. So you could also make a flow chart. So again, you can kind of use these lists around the room. And then there's this flow chart. So this is really good if, like, for example, there's a tech issue. Well, what do the students do? What are the steps in order for them to create that flow chart? So when there are multiple solutions to a problem, so for example, computer issue, there can be multiple different solutions depending on the student's issue. So I might put computer issue. Then I might say, okay, based on this issue, have you restarted your computer? Is your Chrome up to date? If the answers are yes, no, they keep going down on the flowchart, and then they might have to eventually go to the media center. But again, they're learning how to problem solve. They're learning these different skills to be independent. And they're also learning like what they need to do in a certain order. So a flowchart can really, really help them if they need to. So if they're stuck, then they do this. If I don't know how to spell this, what do I do? Do I ask the teacher? Because if you don't have a procedure, that's what the students are going to do. And you might say, if you don't know how to spell it, use Google, and talk with your students about that. So just letting them know what to do. And if they don't know how to do it, then there's something in place for them to kind of go over this. So now take some time to go through this activity. It's just a Google sheet, and you can quickly go in. Do I have a SOP for this? Yes or no? Okay, do I have an SOP for getting to work immediately? If you don't, it's going to turn yellow, and then you can come in and you can say, oh, I want this to be a list, or maybe you want it to be a flowchart. And then you're going to talk about if it could be a uniform procedure and then describe it. So maybe you create a Canva something, or maybe you think about what you kind of want to do to visualize it for your students. Maybe it's a Google slide deck. So again, you can go in here and put that in there. Also, if you need different ideas for SOPs, you can ask your coaches. We have a ton of different ideas. We've been in a ton of different classrooms, and we can probably share with you a bunch of different ideas. There's also a lot of resources in the Harry Wong book. So you can kind of see that as well. And so if you are struggling, reach out to your coach. We're not going to judge you. We're here to help. We totally get it. And we've been there. I mean, my first year with classroom management was rough, which is good because I can relate with you. So if you do need help, reach out to us. We are more than happy to assist you and just kind of help you think through what do you want to do when you enter the classroom. And we can give you examples of things that we've seen in other classrooms that have been successful, and we can also give you examples of other teachers that might have struggled with this at one time, and talking about like students came in loud because there was no procedure, so like, what do you want to do? How do you want to organize this? Okay. Also, once you have every single thing, you're going to list the no or yes and go through the list again. So again, you're just kind of looking at the list and going through that. You have completed all of this and you've learned a lot about SOPs. So again, if you need help, please seek out your coach for more assistance, and we would be more than happy to help.